Every morning, the same email lands in Karen's inbox. An automated bill from her mother's assisted living facility, due in 3 days. The number is never quite the same, fluctuating with her mother's increasing care needs, but it's always substantial. This single charge, often upwards of $10,000, feels less like an expense and more like a deadline, silently shaping every financial decision Karen makes for the rest of the month. It's a stark reminder that for many Americans, what was once considered a secure middle age, a time when children were independent and parents were self-sufficient, has quietly transformed. The traditional markers of financial stability, like a nearly paid-off mortgage or a healthy retirement account, now compete with an expanding web of familial responsibilities. This isn't about individual financial choices alone. It's about a generation being squeezed from both directions, simultaneously navigating the rising costs of caring for aging parents and supporting adult children struggling to find their footing. It's a reality that challenges the very definition of financial independence in modern America, and it leaves us wondering how one generation can sustain so much for so long. The American dream once painted a clear picture for middle age. The children grown, out of the house, and starting their own lives. Parents settled into a comfortable retirement. This period was often seen as a peak of financial stability, a time to consolidate wealth, enjoy hard-earned independence, and perhaps even accelerate retirement savings. Yet, for millions today, that picture feels increasingly like a faded photograph from a different era. The landscape has shifted dramatically, transforming what should be a comfortable chapter into one of intense financial and emotional pressure. Consider the sheer longevity revolution. A century ago, life expectancy in the U.S. was around 50 years. Today, it's closer to 79. While a triumph of modern medicine, this extended lifespan comes with a profound economic ripple effect. People are living longer, often requiring more extensive and expensive care in their later years. The average annual cost for a private room in a nursing home now approaches $128,000, a figure that can easily eclipse a significant portion of many middle-class incomes. This isn't just a cost. It's a sustained financial outflow that can stretch for years, or even decades, far beyond what many families ever anticipated. At the same time, the journey to adult financial independence has become a far more protracted affair for the younger generation. Student loan debt has exploded. Housing costs have surged well beyond wage growth in many urban centers, and the entry-level job market often offers less stability than in previous decades. It's no longer uncommon for adult children in their 20s or even 30s to require financial assistance for rent, car payments, or even basic living expenses. This trend means that the period of parental financial support, once expected to end with college graduation, now often extends far into young adulthood, delaying parents' own financial milestones. According to various recent reports, the costs of raising a child to age 18 have escalated to over $300,000, excluding college expenses, making the initial investment in the next generation a significant drain, even before higher education begins. What happens when these two seismic shifts, longer lives for parents and delayed independence for children, converge on a single generation? It creates a pressure point where the financial responsibilities of one household are effectively stretched to cover the needs of three distinct generations. This isn't just about rising prices. It's about a fundamental restructuring of family economics, where the buffer of the middle class is constantly tested. This dual burden means that many households in their 40s and 50s are navigating a complex financial reality. They are simultaneously trying to pay down their own mortgages, save for their own retirement, and cover the costs associated with both their elderly parents and their adult children. It's a relentless balancing act, where every dollar has competing demands, and every financial decision carries the weight of multiple futures. This intricate dance of obligations is best understood through the lived experience of someone at its very center, like Karen, whose everyday life mirrors the quiet struggle of millions. Karen's days often felt like a series of carefully timed phone calls. The first, just after sunrise, was to her mother. "Everything all right, Mom? Did you remember your morning pills?" Her mother, Eileen, at 82, lived in an assisted living facility that offered independence with a safety net, a compromise Karen fought hard for and now paid dearly for. Eileen's memory was fading, and her mobility was declining, making daily check-ins essential. Then came the second call, usually around dinner, from her son Alex. He was 26, bright and ambitious, but perpetually just shy of stable. "Hey, Mom, good news. I almost got that freelance gig. Bad news, rent's due next week, and I'm still short a bit." Alex had moved to a new city after college, chasing an elusive dream in the creative industries, and the cost of living there was merciless. Karen knew the struggle was real. Not a lack of effort on his part, but the consistent request for a few $100s always felt like a tug on an already taut rope. Karen, at 53, was an operations manager for a mid-sized logistics company. Her annual household income, combined with her husband Mark's, was a respectable $190,000. Their mortgage was nearly paid off, a testament to decades of careful budgeting and hard work. Their retirement accounts, while not extravagant, were healthy and growing, designed to provide a comfortable, if not luxurious, future. From the outside, Karen and Mark were the embodiment of middle-class success. Yet, the reality of their finances was far more intricate, a continuous juggling act that left little room for error or unexpected expenses. Every month, before her own paycheck even cleared, Karen mentally allocated funds. There was the substantial assisted living fee for her mother, a non-negotiable expense that ate up a significant chunk of their budget. Then came the prescriptions, the transportation costs for Eileen's doctor appointments, and the occasional special needs not covered by insurance. It was a constant flow of payments, each one a reminder of aging, a process both inevitable and incredibly expensive. Simultaneously, Alex's intermittent requests, while smaller individually, added up. He needed help with rent one month, a car repair the next, a security deposit for a new apartment when the old lease ended. Karen and Mark never wanted to enable him, but they also couldn't bear to see him truly struggle. Knowing how challenging the economic landscape was for young people today, they wanted to provide a safety net, not a hammock, but the distinction often felt blurry. Beyond these direct familial supports, their own household had its demands. The rising cost of groceries, utilities, and insurance premiums felt like an accelerating treadmill. Even with a nearly paid-off home, property taxes and maintenance costs were relentless. The dishwasher unexpectedly broke last month, followed by a leaky roof that needed immediate repair. Another few $1,000s diverted from their carefully planned retirement contributions. It wasn't about extravagant purchases. It was simply the cost of maintaining a functioning life. Karen often looked at her budget spreadsheet, a sea of numbers that barely balanced each month, and felt a quiet desperation. They were doing everything right, working hard, saving diligently, living within their means. Yet, the financial breathing room they had anticipated at this stage of life remained elusive. They had planned for their own future, but they hadn't fully accounted for the economic pressures on both sides of their generational ledger. Next Tuesday, the assisted living facility was hosting its annual financial review meeting, a mandatory appointment that always brought a fresh wave of anxiety, wondering what new costs or policy changes would be announced. It was another deadline, another reminder of the profound and often silent burden they carried. This persistent state of financial strain, however, wasn't unique to Karen's household. It was a reflection of broader structural shifts reshaping the American middle class. Karen's quiet desperation, shared by millions, isn't simply the result of unfortunate individual circumstances or poor planning. It's a direct consequence of structural forces that have quietly reshaped the economic landscape, pushing responsibilities once shared by society or institutions back onto individual families. The phenomenon of the sandwich generation isn't an anomaly. It's a systemic outcome where the very fabric of middle-class security is stretched thin by converging pressures from an aging population and a struggling younger generation. One of the most significant shifts lies in the economics of longevity. While living longer is a blessing, the infrastructure to support those extended years, particularly long-term care, has become prohibitively expensive. The average cost of a private nursing home room, now exceeding $127,000 annually, isn't merely an abstract statistic. It represents a multi-year financial commitment that can quickly deplete even substantial savings. Assisted living, often seen as a more affordable option, has also seen its costs rise dramatically, forcing families to confront difficult choices when public support systems remain limited and often difficult to navigate. Some might argue that these rising costs reflect an improvement in the quality of care, with more personalized services and advanced medical interventions becoming available. Indeed, modern elder care often provides a level of comfort and medical oversight that was unimaginable a few decades ago. However, even accounting for these enhancements, the rate at which costs have outpaced wage growth and the lack of comprehensive, affordable long-term care insurance solutions means that the burden has shifted disproportionately onto private finances. The system, in essence, relies on individual families to absorb an ever larger share of what was once considered a societal responsibility, leaving many vulnerable. Simultaneously, the economic hurdles facing young adults have never been higher. Student loan debt, now a national crisis, delays financial independence by years, sometimes a decade or more. The cost of housing, particularly in desirable urban centers where jobs are concentrated, continues to climb far beyond what entry-level salaries can reasonably afford. This isn't just about young people choosing to live at home longer. It's about a fundamental mismatch between earning potential and the cost of essential goods and services, forcing parents to remain a financial lifeline long after their children have entered adulthood. The housing market, in particular, plays a critical role here. While local zoning policies and community preferences certainly contribute to housing shortages in specific areas, the broader trend of rising property values, coupled with stagnant real wage growth for many, means that accumulating a down payment and securing an affordable mortgage has become an increasingly daunting task for the younger generation. This inevitably circles back to the previous generation, as parents find themselves dipping into their own savings or taking on new debt to help their children secure a basic foothold in the economy, effectively delaying their own retirement timelines. In the process, healthcare inflation, beyond just elder care, also siphons significant resources from middle-aged households. Rising deductibles, co-pays, and prescription costs mean that even those with employer-provided insurance plans face substantial out-of-pocket expenses. A sudden illness or chronic condition in any family member can quickly derail a carefully constructed budget. This constant drain on resources means less discretionary income, less savings for emergencies, and ultimately, less flexibility to absorb the unexpected financial demands from either parents or children. Furthermore, the social safety nets that once provided some protection have been eroded or haven't kept pace with economic realities. Retirement uncertainty, driven by shifts from defined benefit pensions to defined contribution plans, places more risk on individuals. The declining affordability of assisted living and the limited scope of public programs mean that families are often left scrambling to find solutions. This web of interconnected challenges creates a systemic vulnerability, where one generation finds itself serving as the primary shock absorber for the economic pressures faced by two others. This structural reality means that the invisible responsibility gap Karen feels, that quiet, nagging sense of not quite being able to get ahead, is not a personal failing. It's a direct outcome of a system that has quietly offloaded vast economic burdens onto the middle class. The promise of middle age as a period of accumulating wealth and decreasing responsibility has been subtly undermined, replaced by a constant state of financial triage. This isn't just about money. It's about the profound psychological toll this ceaseless pressure takes, transforming aspirations into anxieties The invisible responsibility gap that weighs on Karen and countless others goes beyond mere financial strain. It delves into a profound psychological shift, altering expectations and reshaping the very emotional landscape of middle age. What was once envisioned as a plateau of relative stability, a time for reflection, personal growth, and perhaps a little more discretionary spending, has become a constant tightrope walk, fraught with chronic stress and an pervasive sense of being perpetually behind. This isn't just about balancing a budget. It's about balancing identities. Middle-aged adults find themselves transitioning from independent individuals to primary caregivers and financial lifelines for both their elders and their progeny. This multifaceted role often leaves little room for their own aspirations, subtly eroding the sense of personal agency they once held. The dream of starting a passion project, traveling more, or simply having more free time often fades into the background, eclipsed by the immediate needs of others. The mental toll is significant. Studies from institutions like the University of Michigan highlight that those in the sandwich generation are twice as likely to report significant financial difficulties and experience emotional distress. This isn't surprising when every financial decision becomes a zero-sum game. Do you contribute more to your 401k? Or do you cover your mother's new medication? Do you finally upgrade that aging appliance? Or do you send your son money for a security deposit on a better apartment? Each choice carries the weight of a potential sacrifice, creating a pervasive undercurrent of anxiety and, for many, guilt. This constant tug-of-war between competing needs can also foster a quiet disillusionment with the system itself. Many middle-aged Americans grew up believing that hard work, education, and prudent saving would guarantee a predictable path to financial security and a comfortable retirement. Yet, as they witness their own parents struggling with healthcare costs and their children facing unprecedented barriers to independence, that faith in the established economic order begins to waver. The promises of past generations, that each would be better off than the last, feel increasingly hollow, replaced by a sense of being caught in a societal bind. This shift isn't just about individual stress. It redefines the generational contract. The expectation of mutual support transforms into a one-way street, with the middle generation serving as the primary bridge over increasingly turbulent economic waters. They are often adapting, not by choice, but by necessity, stretching resources and delaying their own milestones in ways their parents never had to consider. The emotional burden of watching loved ones struggle, coupled with the pressure to fix problems that feel systemic, can lead to feelings of isolation and exhaustion. The relentless nature of these demands means that financial planning for the sandwich generation often ceases to be about maximizing opportunity, and instead becomes a perpetual exercise in managing obligations. It's less about growth and more about containment, about preventing crises rather than building wealth. This subtle but profound reorientation changes the entire outlook on money and the future, transforming optimism into a cautious vigilance. Karen knew this feeling well, as the annual financial review at her mother's assisted living facility loomed. A stark deadline reminding her that the cycle of responsibility showed no signs of easing. It was a cycle that had quietly redefined what it meant to be middle class in America. For generations, middle age was seen as a period of culmination, a time when financial security allowed for a shift from accumulation to enjoyment, from building a foundation to savoring its fruits. It was the reward for years of hard work, a chance to see children thrive and parents age gracefully. But for millions today, that promise has been quietly renegotiated. The daily email Karen received reminding her of her mother's assisted living bill was not just a recurring expense. It was a symbol of this new reality, a constant deadline that underscored the profound and continuous demands placed upon her generation. This isn't to say that the American middle class has stopped striving. They continue to work, save, and provide, demonstrating an unwavering commitment to their families. Yet, the quiet multiplication of those depending on their stability, both the elders needing extensive care and the young adults navigating an unforgiving economy, has transformed the very nature of their financial journey. The dream of a comfortable middle age has not vanished, but it has been stretched, reconfigured, and imbued with a weight that few previous generations fully encountered. The question is no longer whether families are willing to help one another. That fundamental bond remains as strong as ever. Instead, it has become a structural challenge. Can one generation realistically carry the economic burdens of three, particularly when the costs of care and the barriers to independence continue to escalate? As the middle class grapples with these converging pressures, perhaps the truest measure of their resilience will not be found in their personal savings, but in their quiet, relentless commitment to sustaining everyone who leans on them. What becomes of a society when the very bedrock of its economy is stretched so thin